PLD Projects presents Holy Snokes, a Star Wars podcast featuring PLD and Matty Gunner. May the Force be with you, always. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to PLD Projects. Welcome back to Holy Snokes. And as you can see, I guess I lied to you yesterday. We were supposed to have Matty Gunner back. He's obviously been traveling, as I mentioned before. We actually changed days because we were going to have Matty back, because Matty was actually literally going to be traveling during our usual recording time on Wednesdays. That's why I switched review over to Wednesday. I'm going to do Holy Snokes today. He got to the hotel where he was staying, and he let me know that his hotel Wi-Fi was shite. So shite, in fact, that as soon as he started streaming anything, it would lag to the point of, well, absolute nothingness. So we're going to have to go one more week at least without Matty Gunner, my intrepid co-host. We wish you well, Matty. I hope you're doing okay, and we miss you, buddy. We miss you. I can't wait to get you back on this podcast. We need your dark side takes. I'm so light side. I'm having a little bit of white bread here, right? You know, I need my co-host here. I need my Chewbacca. I need my sidekick, my co-pilot. Everything we need about you. But we know things happen. Life happens for a reason. Whatever it is, I'm sure the Force will work itself out, and you'll be back stronger than ever. But that will be next week. So this week, you're stuck with me solo again, but that's okay. I hope you stick with us here on PLD Projects. We have a definitely cool show today, talking a little bit of news, just a little bit of news, not a whole lot that broke that was worth breaking down. But then we'll break into the future of Star Wars. We're going to look at all the projects that are rumored, as far as TV and movies go, rumored in production, where we stand. I'm going to let you know what I think about what I'm waiting for, most excited about. Everything we know, everything we don't know, speculation, all that kind of stuff. I'll rank that. And of course, let me know in the comments what you think. Which projects you're excited about? That should be a lot of fun too. If this is your first time here, to like it, to subscribe, all that good stuff. If you're listening on the audio, on the Gilmore LLC, let us know what you think about that as well. Leave those reviews. Everything can help the channel out, help out Gilmore Media as well. I'll try to swim upstream, as it were, as best we can, swimming together rather than drowning apart. So yeah, this week it's a fun week of Star Wars. I'm trying to get back into kind of getting to that groove. Once Ahsoka ended, we kind of get left with that void. It's kind of funny to me. I feel like we talk about possible oversaturation in Marvel and in Star Wars. You know, the advent of Disney Plus, it always seemed like there was always something going on, especially more Marvel, I think, than Star Wars to me. But it always seems like there's something going on. I'm trying to compare that back to the days of the 1980s, back when I grew up, where after 1983, after Return of the Jedi, we had nothing, bupkis. There were a few comics here and there. Eventually, we got some books, but there was a time where we just pretty much, that was it. There was no Star Wars. A couple of toy lines maybe, but nothing to look forward to, nothing to get excited about. We're spoiled. We're spoiled now. So now that Ahsoka's off the air for a little bit, we're like, oh, what's next? Well, I mean, we have 2 shows upcoming probably within the next 6 months. So we have stuff to look forward to, and yet it's not enough. We're trying to fill that Star Wars void in our hearts while nothing else is going on the screen for us. But there is stuff going on in the books. I will talk a little bit about that real quick. This is something I would like to see the show get into a little bit more, especially during downtime between TV and movies, is the book content, the comic book content. Unfortunately, the way I've been reading it recently, it hasn't been good for that, in terms of I'm behind on some things. I recently decided to do a read of sorts, everything in chronological order for the High Republic, because I had kind of lost my way a little bit. The way they had released it, they did phase 1, of course, and they went back years before that to do phase 2, which kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. And I kind of was reading some things the wrong way. So I decided to go back and just go read everything chronologically. So I figured out exactly where I am so I can get into phase 3, which has started. And I've heard some good things about Eye of Darkness, which of course is going to feature Marcian Rowe, the villain of the High Republic era at this point. I can't wait to see where that goes. And we're getting into that a little bit more later on as well because of the Acolyte. We'll talk about that a little bit. Obviously, we have Ernesto Rowe appearing in the Acolyte, and that should be a lot of fun for that. So I would like to get into that, but we'll see. To see at some point, maybe if I catch up and I start going by when it starts releasing again, I can start getting a little more into that. People will take specific book clubs for specific episodes, things of that nature. I know I like to talk about Rise of the Red Blade. Matty and I talked about that at some point. Maybe we'd reread that and go through that a little bit. A lot of good stuff in the publishing side of things at this point. I do feel like the publishing side is starting to break free from what it had been ever since Disney took over. Let me actually rewind that a little bit even further. Back in the day, like when I was just talking about the Dark Ages, it was when Star Wars started getting fully into the books with the Heir to the Empire trilogy, the Zahn trilogy, and expanded out from there. That's what the whole EU is, really. I mean, the comic books were there as well, but they had the future of Star Wars themselves. They were writing the future of Star Wars. There was no movies. There was like the hints of the prequels at that point. They weren't allowed to do certain things. They weren't allowed to go touch like Darth Vader or Obi-Wan's backstory. They weren't allowed to kill off any of like the big three. But other than that, like really galaxy shaping events were taking place in the books. Since Disney took over, obviously anything of real major importance was trying to be saved for the screen. They had a sequel trilogy. Also, they had spin-off movies. All of a sudden, we have television shows. And all of those are covering these important parts. So what's left for the books to really carve out for their own and make important? At first, not a whole lot. A lot of the books were basically, well, we'll do a prequel to the movie. We'll do Catalyst for Rogue One. In terms of kind of like we'll take whatever show we have or whatever video we have, visual we have, I should say, and we'll just go, a little bit before that to build up to it, which is nice. It's always nice to flesh it out. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I liked Catalyst for Rogue One, for example, but at the same time, you can't help but think like you're tying everything to what's already visually there. That how do you carve off your own little space? How do you know? I mean, nothing of true, real importance can happen in the books because they're about characters that are tied into the movies. So it kind of became like this, they're fun, but they're excess. They don't become necessary. Heir to the Empire was necessary for Star Wars at the time. That's what Star Wars was. That's what the Star Wars story was. Didn't get that with the books or the comics. I mean, there was some cool, obviously, moments. Like I can remember this, obviously, when Boba Fett tells Darth Vader that Luke Skywalker is his son, or he's the one who destroyed the Death Star. Great moments like that. We get a little bit of that. With the prequels there, we get to actually explore some of the background stuff with Vader and Obi-Wan and things of that nature. Touch those little holes, make them a little. There's little holes in the film story, in the TV story that weren't touched on. Good stuff, but still feels a little superfluous is probably the best word for it. I think that's why I think they understood that a little bit in the book side of things, which is why they decided to expand on the High Republic, because the High Republic they could take away from the Skywalker saga and anything really that's been visually on screen, even if Rogue One and Solo were still technically, I mean, they're part of this. I mean, they're not. I guess they're not technically part of the Skywalker saga, but they really are. I mean, Solo is dealing with Han Solo, who is a big character in the Skywalker saga. Rogue One is what happens right before Episode 4, when Darth Vader and Leia are both in it. They make small appearances; they're still there. So we go back 100 plus years for the High Republic, a couple hundred years plus the High Republic. They can carve out their own space, all new characters, and appearance by Yoda every once in a while. But it felt like its own thing. Obviously, as far as galaxy shaping events, they're still got to gear towards eventually going towards what we have in Episode 1, 2, and 3. But you can do a lot with your own little space. So I know that's probably one of the reasons why they decided to do that. But it does feel a little bit more like we're getting a little bit of touch and go with some important stuff that is not technically related to any specific project, which is more important to me. So a lot of the books, like I said, not only were they just they just felt like precursors to current projects, tie-ins to current projects. When you get Rise of the Red Blade, for example, a more recent one, it's just its own story told within the realm of Episode 1 through 3 of the Clone Wars, but totally new character and a lot of fun there. For example, John Jackson Miller's Obi-Wan, or I'm sorry, not Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Jedi Council book he's going to be doing, taking place just before the Phantom Menace. All the stuff seems to be expanding the universe out in a way that can carve out its own little spot in the universe. So I'm happy to see that happen as well. So yeah, I'd like to do some books at some point, books and comics. Not quite there yet. Eventually, I will hopefully get there. Me and Matty will do something. Maybe Matty will do his own thing. I'll have him do a solo show or so. We all do a solo show if we're not reading the same thing. But we'll definitely predict some things or pick some things to read. Probably grow into Legends too. I'm not like, it seems like sometimes there's this big divide between Legends and the canon, and like you can either like one or the other. And I don't know about you guys. I like both. I love both. I'm okay with the current canon. I'm reading everything from the current canon, enjoying myself. I am also an old school EU guy. Yes, a lot of not so great things in both, to be honest. Of course, there's always some flaws in the thing. Nothing's perfect, but there's a lot of fun stories from the EU I'd like to go back and break down as well. But we'll let that come as it may, in an organic fashion, so to speak. This week's show is about the future of Star Wars visually. Of course, the canon, the movies and the TV shows, all the productions that are in production or rumored. Hopefully, I got them all. I did a little bit of a deep dive last night. We do have a little bit of news I want to talk about. Not a whole lot, like I said, but let's get that going first. The real big news is the Acolyte full list of writers was put out there by the WGA. It was revealed by the WGA. So we know exactly who's writing it, and we can kind of take a deep dive on who these people are at this point. And let's take a look. All right, the full list of writers from the Acolyte is as follows. We'll break down who they are a little bit. Episode 1 is going to be written by the showrunner, Leslie Headland, who also directed it. It makes sense if you're going to be a showrunner who's a director, or a writer, you want to put your stamp right on the get-go of it. Episode 2 is written by Jason McAuliffe and Charmaine DeGrante. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing those names. I'm not very good at pronunciation of names. Jason McAuliffe, interestingly, hasn't been seen writing since like 2018's Heathers. And yet they're going to pull on him quite a bit. I'm not sure where he went in the meantime, but he will be co-writing in episode 2. He'll be co-writing in episode 6. And interestingly enough, this is where I really kind of go, okay, you're putting a lot on the guy. He solely wrote the final episode in the season, episode 8, the season finale, solely written by this Jason McAuliffe. So hopefully he delivers. Charmaine DeGrante also co-wrote episode 2. Also had a co-write credit on episode 7. Charmaine DeGrante, best known for House of the Dragon, which we love here at PLD Projects. We actually did some big class action. Back in the day, class action. We did House of the Dragon versus Rings of Power. We all loved House of the Dragon here, and that was a great run. So anybody from that production is definitely worth talking about, worth giving a shot. Episode 3 was written by Jasmine Flournoy, who I really couldn't find anything on. So a new, as far as solo credits go, she was assistant writer for a couple of things. This is her first co-writing, like a real writing credit, I believe. I could be wrong. If I'm mistaken, I apologize. But Jasmine Flournoy got a co-write on episode 3 and episode 7. Episode 7, that will complete with Jen Richards as well, who is an actor of Blind Spotting and Better Things. So that's episode 7 with Charmaine DeGrante from House of the Dragon. Jen Richards, the actor. So interesting. She's turning to writing now. And this Jasmine Flournoy, who I don't know very much about. Also on episode 3, Eileen Shim, who is another person from House of the Dragon. So we definitely rated the House of the Dragon casket there, or whatever, a cargo there to get some co-writers in for the Acolyte. I'm all on board with that. Episode 4 is written by Claire Kleckel, who was a co-writer on Watchmen, the Watchmen series, and also on the old OA, which is a fun show. That's pretty cool. Episode 4 also co-written by Cora Donna, who worked on Mr. Robot, and I guess is executive producer on the upcoming Dune: The Sisterhood series on Max. So that's a very strong sci-fi talent right there. So I'm glad to have her on board. She co-wrote on 4. She also co-wrote on 5 alongside Cameron Squires, who is a co-producer on The Acolyte, also was in the writing room for WandaVision. So that's I'm really highly enjoyed WandaVision. All great pedigree so far. Episode 6 was again Mr. McAuliffe, as well as Jocelyn Bio. I'm not sure how to say that again. She is a Headland binky, so to speak. She worked with Russian Doll with Headland. Episode 7, like I mentioned, was De Grate, Jen Richards, and Jonathan Florida. And as I mentioned before, episode 8, Jason McAuliffe, solely writing the finale. Yeah, mostly our co-writes. Just the episode 1 and episode 8 are sole writers. It's Headland and McAuliffe. Yeah, so let's see. It does seem like a great pedigree. That's the main thing I take out of this. It's always hard to judge writers specifically. I don't know much of their content or anything like that. I don't know how they're going to write the Acolyte. It's just because they write well in House of the Dragon doesn't necessarily mean they'll write Star Wars well. But talent usually does out. I'd rather have somebody who has the pedigree of House of the Dragon, a Watchman, of Mr. Robot, things of that nature, than not. So it does appear. I'm appreciative of this lineup of writers. I think that's a lot of talent in one place, and hopefully they can help Leslie showcase what she wants to show in the writing room, so to speak. Let me know in the comments. All right, upcoming next. Also, real quick note here: Light and Magic, the documentary on Disney Plus, is, according to Joe Johnson, getting a second season. It was an offhanded comment he made where he was in conversation. He it was a throwaway comment about having just finished a interview for the season 2 of the documentary, and no one had ever mentioned it before. So I don't know if Joe is supposed to say anything. I don't know if it's officially announced. I don't know if they would make any kind of headway without having any real plans. That doesn't make sense. I figure it's got to happen if you're filming it, right? And you're not going to film a documentary season and just not release it. So that's something to look forward to for sure, though. Light and Magic was definitely an exciting part of an executive documentary on Disney Plus before, who's starting to do some cool things. This is not Star Wars related, really kind of Star Wars tangentially related. I don't know if any of you out there, so I'm sure a lot of you did. The trailer for the Harrison Ford becoming Indiana Jones documentary, I think it's called Timeless. That's going to come to Disney Plus on December 1st. That trailer gave me some goosebumps, maybe a little man tear here and there. Was slightly forming, a little misty eyed. It's that warm blanket kind of feeling. I can't wait to watch Disney Plus dive into the deep end there with Harrison Ford, his earlier careers, how he was discovered by Lucas and then Spielberg, and what he has become today. Yeah, it should be a great time. So, well, that is the wrap up of the news I wanted to talk about. Let's get into the rest of this time here. We got the upcoming projects in Star Wars. Now, Star Wars projects have obviously been notorious, of course, recently in the past 10 years there's a lot of leaks, a lot of things in development, a lot of things that get canceled. Now, on this channel, you realize I'm much more forgiving to Lucasfilm for the cancellation of things than a lot of other channels have been. A lot of people get up in arms about things. I think you can't. Now, when something's been officially announced and then it's been canceled, that can be annoying. That can be a little, no, unprofessional is not quite the right word, but it can be a sign of bad things. However, a lot of things that were canceled were all kind of like rumors. Things were mentioned in trades, in interviews. Somebody talked about, I pitched this, it didn't happen. Like the Guillermo del Toro movie, for example, the most recent example, was never announced by Lucasfilm. And I'm sure there's probably many more stories like that, not just in Star Wars, but in Marvel and other IP, where famous directors or famous writers or famous storytellers had a conversation with a studio, maybe pitched a story in the IP, and it didn't end up happening. It doesn't mean that happens all the time. So to me, that is, and it's kind of like, there's good and bad of it. I'd rather hear about that stuff. Even when it's stuff like that, I'm like, oh, damn it, what a missed opportunity. That would have been really cool. And it's sad I don't get it. I'd still rather hear about the possibility and like let my imagination open up to what that could have been, rather than not get anything at all. But then there's the other side. I feel like every time we hear about something like that, it just aims more fuel to this fire of these people who just can't let go. They're like, Kathleen Kennedy this, Lucasfilm this. And it's kind of like, this is a story behind the scenes in Hollywood. It happens all the time. I mean, we just don't hear about it as much. We hear about it more on the bigger IPs, on the ones that are more. You get more leaks about Star Wars than you do about a lot of other IPs. So I think we got to relax and chill. And just if something happened that you didn't like, it sucks, but it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. I don't know. But all right, let's talk about the television shows first. Then we'll break into the movies. Speaking of the television shows, there's a couple I'm going to talk about right off the top that either have been retooled or are unknown. For a long time, it was kind of flown out that the Book of Boba Fett might have a season two. It was probably the most divisive of the series. A lot of people, if a lot of rankings you would see, it was probably last on the list of the live action stuff so far in Star Wars. I personally enjoyed a lot of it. I loved getting into the Tusken Raiders and that aspect of it. I think there's a lot of coolness to it. I think even though Din took over for an episode and he shoved Boba Fett out of his own show, I get some of the complaints that were there, but I think there's a lot of coolness there, and I'd love to see more between Boba and Fennec Shan specifically, with or without Din. But it does feel like at this point, status is unknown, but I kind of feel like it's not going to happen. So I'm not going to give you my rating of how much I'm looking forward to it because I don't believe it's going to happen. So I'm going to go with, at a scale of 1 to 11, whether or not it's going to happen, I'm going to go with a 2. 2 out of 11 chances this happens. Not quite 1. It's definitely not 0 to 11. I'll say 2 out of 11 because there's always a chance that this can get retooled or something. Have a conversation with the actors. Sometimes they can push something, maybe a mini series even. Who knows? But I'm pretty doubtful it's going to happen. I think anything that they had ideas for Boba Fett probably will get retooled into Mandalorian or perhaps another one of the TV series. Maybe Boba Fett will appear in the eventual Filoni movie we'll talk about. But yeah, that's going to be the one that doesn't happen as far as I'm concerned. All right, next up, the other one that, well, this one was announced, but definitely wasn't through any faults of Lucasfilm that this changed. Of course, I'm talking about the Rangers of the New Republic TV series. At one point, this was going to be a vehicle for Gina Carano and Cara Dune, the character from Mandalorian. Then Gina got into a little hot water on social media, couldn't maintain the decorum that Lucasfilm expected out of her, and she was fired. And as we know, and she's still ranting and raving on social media at this point about it. This Lucasfilm has kind of moved on. Cara Dune is no longer in The Mandalorian season 3, and there's no way in hell she was getting a TV show based around her character. So Rangers of the New Republic hit a big snag. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that it's gonna be gone. Because I mean, you think about the title. Obviously, the title is the Rangers of the Republic. It's about a lot of the X-wing pilots. We're talking about that. There are ways you can retool it with a different lead character. You could have this actually turn out to be a Hera show. Hera and Jason show Hera could be in charge of the Rangers. She could be the general in charge. You could have Carson Teva, who's been kind of really put into that state, really, as he's been making his way throughout the Mandoverse shows as a kind of a, I don't about to say a rogue X-Men pilot kind of thing, pun not intended, but should have been intended. But a guy who works well for the New Republic, has the New Republic's best interest in heart, to the point where he's a little bit of a rebel still, though. He's still a rebel like Hera. He's not going to just blindly listen to crap that is being doled out by the government, so to speak. But having him in charge of like a Wild West kind of X-Wing pilot series out there, that could be cool. I do remember hearing stories that some of the ideas for the New Republic show were kind of put into the Mandalorian and things of that nature. So will they make a new story about it? I'm kind of thinking no. I'm kind of thinking no at this point because I don't know that they've been kind of talking about paring things back as far as quantity of shows. They're trying to make this more event again. Definitely, again, more on the Marvel side of things for sure. As far as Star Wars goes, although I would think that this might fall by the wayside, maybe get folded into certain other storytelling at that point. But I wouldn't completely say it's not going to happen. So I'm going to give it a scale of 1 to 11. Again, as you always turn up to 11 here on PLD projects. I'm going to say this has a chance of about 4.5 of happening. If it got announced next like celebration or next Disney, whatever, one of the big Disney events, I would be surprised if it was reannounced with Teva or Hera as the lead, especially if we're gonna figure out what we're doing with the Ahsoka characters going forward. Obviously, Ahsoka left off season one in a place where Ahsoka and Sabine are in one galaxy, Hera and the rest are another galaxy where Thrawn is. A lot of different things that could be happening. Maybe that fits the tool. Although at the same time, I kind of feel like we don't want to get everybody too overwhelmed and too spread too thin, as Kevin Feige had been for a bit, honestly. So again, maybe I guess we will find out. Okay. Next up, speaking of Ahsoka season two, not been announced yet. Very nebulous. It's one of those things that it feels like it's assumed it's going to happen. Yeah, we don't have an announcement for it. So that kind of always makes me a little wary. Obviously, the story needs to continue in some way, shape, or form. This is all supposedly leading towards the Mando movie, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a bit. Um, it feels like there's too much left open to be closed by the movie, considering the movie will also have to deal a lot with the rest of the Mandoverse as well. So I think this is I am agreeing that this has got to happen. I'm going to say this is a 9, 10, even a 10 out of 11 going to happen. We just don't have any much information about it. The only thing I've heard is that it'll happen before Filoni's movie. If that's the case, though, they got to really start getting going on it and making sure it's ready to go. I would assume all the characters are back. I'd assume it's Ahsoka, Sabine. I'd assume Hera and Jason and Carson as well. I would assume that Thrawn would be involved somehow. I would assume, of course, that Shinhani is not done. We know Balin shouldn't be done. That character was left open. I mean, I guess there is a universe in which they leave Balin off looking for his thing. I mean, we never hear about him again, and he dies in the way off planet. But I think that'd be a great disservice to what was probably the standout character from Ahsoka season 2, or season 1 rather, especially new characters, and leaving off as they did with with Balin with the big statue from Mortis. I feel like they're going to have to recast and get his story out there somehow. So there's a lot of threads open that I feel like it'd be hard pressed for the movie to close out on them. So I'm going to guess we're going to get Ahsoka season 2, and it'll probably lead right into it will lead into the Mandoverse movie. That's my prediction. Um, unless Unless, and I'll break into this now, Mandalorian season 4, there were some really random rumors, and I don't know how serious they were. I don't know. I never heard from anybody like really close to the story, but there was definitely talk that it was going to be a movie instead of a TV show. I don't know if that was somebody getting the Dave Filoni Mandoverse movie confused with Mandalorian season 4. They saw that Dave Filoni was making a movie to culminate the Mandoverse and assumed it was turning Mandalorian season 4 into a movie. I don't think so. The interesting thing about it is if the movie is a culmination of the Mandoverse stuff, Mandalorian season 3, like it or not, it's definitely more divisive than seasons 1 or 2. I enjoyed a lot of it. It ended in a way where it could have ended. There weren't exactly a whole lot of open stories at that point. You know, Bo-Katan was back with her Mandalorian sex on Mandalore. You had Boba Fett. You had Din and Grogu just kind of chilling. They had this open-ended, like, well, we're going to work with the New Republic, helping you out on things exclusively, but we have our own little ranch, which we're going to relax at. There was no real open-endedness to it. So maybe a season 4 could a Mando movie happen without season 4? Could they just do Ahsoka season 2 and then maybe the movie, then whatever the final battle against Thrawn, the Rangers of the New Republic, bring Din in, Grogu in at that point? That's actually a possibility for me, but I know that Mandalorian season 4 was written, so it would be strange if it didn't happen, because actually, if Mandalorian season 4 is written, then why wouldn't they film it? Again, things change, so that's my only that's why we have to say that why it's a possibility in my head. Things, plans change. Maybe they want to cut back on some things, but I doubt it. I think 10 out of 11, 10.5 out of 11 in season 4 will happen, mainly because Jon Favreau has already written it, or the Jon Favreau and team, I should say, have already written it. It's probably going to go into production sooner rather than later. I would expect Mandalorian season 4 before Ahsoka season 2. My own thought process on that. Yeah, but nothing else about what it would be about. No idea. Is Mando going to continue the Thrawn story? Is Thrawn going to be a villain that kind of bounces here and there? Because everything is pointing towards Thrawn being the big bad guy of the Mando movie. So it would kind of make sense. It would kind of make sense that Thrawn is reintroduced, I should say, back on Ahsoka. He gets to the other side of the galaxy. Maybe Thrawn's tale is continued in Mandalorian season 4, whereas Ahsoka and Sabine's tale, alongside Shin and Balin, is told in Ahsoka season 2. That would make a lot of sense, and then they can also obviously reconvene at that point with everything else for the Mando movie. Very interesting concepts there. It's in ways murky. I kind of feel like that might be the best way to do it. I don't know how people would react to that. I kind of wonder how Star Wars fans would react to Thrawn's story being continued in Mandalorian season 4 rather than in Ahsoka season 2, considering how that was set up. I personally would like it. I think, given where Ahsoka is now, I think we should concentrate on, if the title of the show is Ahsoka, let's concentrate on Ahsoka and Sabine, Shin and Balin, and let's take care of that before Ahsoka gets back to our galaxy to take care of things. She can come back as a saving grace, so to speak. The only issue with that would be Ezra. Where does Ezra fit in? Is Ezra going to join the Mandalorian season 4, or is that where the Rangers of the Republic's TV series comes into play? And by that, I would say that Ezra wouldn't be in a Rangers of the Republic type show, but maybe that slot, so to speak, instead of maybe that's the retooling it's going to be. It goes from Rangers of the Republic was going to be this Cara Dune show. And instead of even giving it over to a new lead, maybe they just scrap that and form a new series with Hera, Ezra, and Jason and things of that nature. Maybe they're just kind of be rebuilding, maybe they're starting the resistance, so to speak, alongside maybe even Leia or something to that effect. You see the beginnings of that while Thrawn is in there. But maybe that's where Thrawn goes. I don't know. A lot of different possibilities here. So we'll have to see where this all takes us. So, all right, a couple more TV shows to talk about on live action, and we'll quickly go into some of the animation, which you don't have a lot of information on, but we can discuss that a little bit. Obviously, the 3 most recent ones, we're going kind of going from further out to closer in, because we have 3 TV series that could debut in 2024. I'll go through them. We have Skeleton Crew, we have The Acolyte, and we have season 2 of Andor. All seem to be possibly in 2024. Of course, the strikes happened, and the strikes have pushed a lot of things back. So these release dates are definitely very fluid, if nothing else. I mean, hell, as of this moment, the strikes are still ongoing. And I will pause and say we are here very supportive of the strikes. We want the actors to get everything that they deserve, a living wage, safe working conditions. Studios pay the money and make it happen, and make things safe and productive, because you need the actors more than they need you, to be completely honest with you. Because you think you don't, but you can't do anything without them. There's only so much reality TV will cover, quite honestly. So anyway, with that in mind, I know Skeleton Crew was initially, there was never an announcement of a date, but it was spoken about being maybe December of this year. I think that's probably gotten pushed back into early 2024. Andor was supposed to be potentially August of 2024. Now with things getting pushed out, that get pushed into maybe October 2024, maybe something to that effect, a couple of months possibly. I'm hoping that's all it is. And where does The Acolyte fall in? I think The Acolyte was initially scheduled. I mean, it's been done for a bit. It obviously it finished, and post-production, I believe, is done. And you might be still working on some post-production, but it was not affected by the strike, from what I've gathered. So maybe that'll be early 2024 in terms of spring, maybe spring 2024, March, April, May. If Skeleton Crew is January or February, maybe they push Acolyte into the summer. June, July, and then maybe that's where Andor gets pushed into the later fall. I think it's a likely way it's going to go. Okay, that's all on my gut. That's nothing I've heard or seen, just basing it on what we have heard before, and with the possibility of the strike pushing. Now, if the strike continues, because the strike could fall apart, we're all acting like, oh, this is a done deal. A lot of people are saying, oh, done deal. We're just signing crossing the T's, dotting the I's, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But until that document is signed and announced, it could fall apart at the drop of a hat. Will it? I don't think so. I think it's going to be done very soon. However, everything I'm talking about is the caveat that the strike is done in the next week or so, compared to getting pushed into the new year, which would be terrible for both for the like on a life scale and on a film and TV scale as well. But let's get into these. The Acolyte, which we talked about today with the writers. I'm looking forward to that one quite a bit. It is not a Mandoverse movie. Obviously, it takes place in the High Republic, 100 years before the Phantom Menace. A lot of cool stuff to talk about there. It's our first time visually live action, at least, where we're going before the Phantom Menace. Yeah, we had a little bit of that in Tales of the Jedi. They talk, the Dooku, some of the Dooku stuff they did there. We had the Ahsoka birth episode, but as far as like really diving deep into something pre Phantom Menace, that's where we're going here. And this looks great from the footage we've seen. I've seen some leaked footage from Celebration. I couldn't help myself. I'm sorry. I feel bad. I feel bad. A bad person. I feel bad. But I couldn't help watching a little bit. I hope we get a full-on video soon. Great cast. Amanda Stenberg is a former Padawan. Lee Jung-jae is a Jedi Master. Got Manny Jacinto in this. Daphne Keane, X-23 herself. What a phenomenal choice she's going to be. She's got the energy, the power of this kind of show. Jodie Turner-Smith, Rebecca Henderson, Charlie Bartlett, Dean Charles Chapman. Carrie-Anne Moss is a Jedi. How cool is that? Getting Carrie-Anne Moss in the Star Wars universe. Margarita Lafayette, of course. Jonas Suintama as a Wookiee Jedi Master. Not Chewbacca, of course. A Wookiee Jedi Master. That's pretty freaking sweet. And then Vernesta Rowe, also a High Republic book character, who is going to be played by Rebecca Henderson, is a Jedi Knight prodigy from the High Republic book series. So I love that. Even if I'm not the High Republic junkie or a fanatic that some people are, I love when they combine the books and the movies. I love when book stuff can get into the shows and vice versa, because it feels like that makes the books matter more. I think that's important when you're building this kind of interconnected universe that Star Wars is. So I am all on. And next up, we got Andor Season 2. That's what we'll talk about here. Of course, Andor Season 1, very successful overall. The only knock against it from some people thought it was a little slow. Some people also thought it didn't have enough of the Star Wars soup, though everyone could not deny that it was probably the most well-written, or at least one of the most well-written shows that they did. A lot of great moments in there, a lot of great characters, a lot of great powerful stuff. I love Andor quite a bit, and I can't wait to see what's going to be happening. I've been slightly concerned about how the strikes affected that. I know it was shooting, and it was finishing shooting during the strikes. The cast said that Tony Gilroy had made sure that it was writer proof or director proof or strike proof, so to speak. And I trust, in Gilroy, I trust. He did a great job with his work on Rogue One. I know there's discussion about how much he did, and has been pushed back recently from Gareth Evans supporters, and that makes sense. Gareth Edwards supporters. I do that all the time, and I'm awful at it. I feel so bad. But either way, he definitely had. I like Rogue One, and Tony Gilroy had influence on it, so I'll give him some credit for that influence, especially after watching Andor. And he definitely had much more of an influence on Andor. So I think it's exciting. It's exciting stuff. I can't wait to see what's going to happen, especially Stellan Skarsgård's character, Luthen. Phenomenal piece of work, and he's my favorite bit of this season in this series. I like getting more with Mon Mothma and conversations that or the interviews that Tony Gilroy said it was going to be a little more. I think we're going to get a little more of that Star Wars soup in season 2, as we are moving more towards Rogue One, more towards the Rebellion, more Cassian Andor is getting away from the soul, his soul place in the universe, joining into the Rebellion. I think we're going to get a little more, not like obviously not lightsabers or anything like that, but you're going to see a little more. You might see Mon Mothma more. Maybe you'll see Bail Organa more. Maybe get a little more of that interconnectivity with the great writing that Andor had. So I'm very excited overall. Very excited to see where that's going to go. Yeah, that's going to be a cool one. Acolyte, I'm going to say, I forgot to say before I jumped into the Andor, Acolyte, my excitement level between 1 out of 11 to see the Acolyte, I'm going to give that one a solid 8. Solid 8. I'm very excited to see the Acolyte, the dark side of things, the martial arts side of things. That's going to be pretty cool. Andor season 2, I'm definitely also at an 8 with, or 8 or 9 maybe, probably 9 because it's already proven itself to me. I can't wait to see that story continue. All right, let's move into the final piece of live action Star Wars in development. Skeleton Crew. Skeleton Crew is going to be, supposedly, like I said, it was going to be released in December initially. I kind of got that feeling it was supposed to be released in, even the Wikipedia still says to this day, still says Skeleton Crew is scheduled to be released on Disney Plus in 2023 and will consist of 8 episodes. Well, I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think it's going to come soon, possibly early 2024, January, February, maybe. Excited about that. Excited about John Watts and Christopher Ford. Excited about Jude Law leading a bevy of children actors, so to speak. I'm not sure how old they are comparatively. Julia White also going to be in it. Of course, Urkel had made that announcement without anybody knowing. This is part of the Mandoverse, which is both in one way limiting, but in other ways makes it much more intriguing. Because it's definitely a story it's got I don't know if it's a hard sell, but connecting to the Manoverse will make people want to make sure they tune in for that. If you pitch me Skeleton Crew and pitch me Acolyte, obviously the dark side is very intriguing to some people, so the dark side might win that over. As a whole, though, I'm excited even without the Manoverse tie-in, even if this hadn't been a Manoverse tie-in. But tying it in does make me a little interested in a different fashion, like more interested in a different way. I love Amblin. I've always loved Steven Spielberg and his 80s adventures with a lot of kids' story. How he was in tune with Back to the Future and with E.T. and his connections with Goonies and things of that nature. This seems like right up my alley, especially since John Watts is hardcore into that as well. It feels like I'm making Spider-Man stuff. Yeah, it should be pretty fun. Should be pretty fun. And Jude Law is a force to be reckoned with. I can't wait to see him in the Star Wars universe. I am on a scale of 1 to 11 here. I'm a solid 8 again, solid 8, 9 again. The only problem is I just haven't seen enough. I saw some footage from Celebration of what I wasn't supposed to see, but there's a lot of cool connections in there. Especially now we left off with Ahsoka where Ahsoka left off. I do wonder if Skeleton Crew is coming from that galaxy. Maybe that's how they're going to get connected. Maybe somehow Skeleton Crew is going to be the way Ahsoka gets home after the end. Who knows? It's hard to tell at this point. Really, it's hard to tell. But I can't wait for it. I definitely can't wait for it. Some great directors. Obviously, got the Daniels directing. We got David Lowery. We got Bryce Dallas Howard, of course, Lee Isaac Chung, Jake Schreier. This could be a really, really, really cool moment in time. And Star Wars needs to expand a little bit. I think this is a good midway expansion point. Like it's going away from the Skywalker saga, away from the Mandoverse a little bit, but still is that connected tie. I like it. I'm excited about it. I can't wait for it. It should be the next live action thing released. Hopefully we get an announcement of it soon. I'm guessing they're going to wait for the actors strike to end. Hopefully, again, you never know. But I think we get a trailer. I think we get a trailer for this soon, I think. And I can't wait for a real trailer, a real thing. And let's look forward to this. And I can't wait to discuss it with Matty Gunner when he comes back. So that will end our live action portion. Although I'm going to go back real quick. There's one more piece of Holy Snokes content that I have to do as far as the live action goes. Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Acolyte, Andor, and Skeleton Crew are the 5 ones we're talking about live action wise. Not a scale of ranking and not a scale of my excitement. This is on a scale of 1 to 11. What is the likelihood that Hondo Ohnaka will appear in live action? Hondo Ohnaka appearing in live action. This is, of course, Hondo Ohnaka, the patron saint of Holy Snokes. I'm going to rank it from least likely to most likely. The least likely, Andor season 2. What? You're saying not the Acolyte that takes place 100 years before the film? I don't know exactly how old Weequay can be, but I do feel like Hondo does not fit with the Andor tone at all. Really, I mean, Hondo's humor is not the same type of humor that's in the show. Now, with that being said, with everything we've heard about Andor getting more involved in the rebellion side of things and everything else, and getting into more of the Star Wars that we know, I would think he's more likely to have been in Andor season 2 than the likeliness he had been in Andor season 1, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense. I know he didn't appear in Andor season 1, but if we didn't know, we only knew the Andor's tone, we would say he wouldn't be in that season. That makes sense. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I know. Andor season 2, though, I think he's still probably the least likely to fall in there. I don't think he's a Tony Gilroy type character. So next up from there, it would be the Acolyte because of everything aforementioned. As far as the dark side go, I don't know about the tone, the martial arts side of things. I think you could have pirates in there. If it's a story taking place from the villain side of things, you could see a more villainous Hondo in early days Hondo, but he's probably too young at that point to really make any impact. So I don't think you'll get him in there as all. But Star Wars likes to do things. Star Wars like to age their characters out. They can age is something, or age of characters is something that can kind of like be deleted as time goes on. You can make them older or have them have longer lifespans. But I'm going to guess that both Andor has a 1 out of 11 chance. Acolyte has about a 1.5 out of 11 chance. Which leaves us to the 3. Skeleton Crew, Ahsoka, and Mandalorian. I think, I have an issue with rating these because they're so interconnected. For example, Skeleton Crew is coming out next. If he appears in Skeleton Crew, that makes his appearance likely in Mandalorian in season 4 much more likely. So why don't I change this to making his debut? How about that? Making his debut. Mandalorian season 4 will be next then, because quite frankly, I think if he's going to debut in a television show, and let's call a spade, they could save him for the Mando movie for sure. But let's talk about that aspect later on. I think he makes a much more likely appearance in something like Skeleton Crew or maybe Ahsoka season 2 than he does in Mandalorian, because Mandalorian is a different kind of show. It's actually less about why he shouldn't be in Mandalorian season 4, and more that it's just more likely to be in Skeleton Crew or Ahsoka. Mandalorian season 4, there's I'd say a 5 out of 11 chance that he could be making his debut in Mandalorian season 4. There's definitely a place for him in Mandalorian, definitively a place for him, especially with the the pirate Kale, the Kale pirate, and everything else. You have pirates in there. Definitely have talked about pirates before, so definitely a place for him. But again, I think it's more likely that he'll be in one of the other 2. So from there, I'd say Ahsoka will be a 6 out of 11, because quite frankly, the only reason why Ahsoka isn't my number 1 choice is because of where Ahsoka landed up. If I'm going on the assumption that we're going to concentrate more on Ahsoka and Sabine and the other galaxy far on the other side or the other part of the universe, then I don't think we're going to have Hondo. Is just not in that part of the universe as far as we know. Now, Hondo is a character that gets around, and anytime he shows up anywhere, you're not entirely shocked. And hell, you can see him at the end of season 2. Maybe he's the reason why they get back to maybe Hondo picks up Ahsoka somehow and gets Ahsoka and Sabine back to our galaxy. You never know, right? So he makes sense as far as not logistically, but as far as character-wise. Obviously, he has a connection with the Joker from the Clone Wars. He has a connection with the Rebels, with Sabine and the Rebels. If they do go into the Hera and Jason side of things, that's a much more likely place to find him. Maybe Hera and Jason need help establishing the resistance potentially, or a resistance, or a splinter group, so to speak. Got to do much meet your old friend Hondo. Hondo should meet with Ezra for Christ's sake. So there you go. And in fact, I'm gonna audible a little bit. that I'll say if there is a retooled Rangers of the New Republic and maybe does star Harry and Jason, that's actually probably number one, to be completely honest with you. That'd probably be completely number one. But since that's not announced, I'm not going to put that on the list. We'll wait and see on that. But my number one currently would actually be Skeleton Crew, because we don't have an idea if this is another galaxy like Ahsoka. Well, that kind of definitely shrinks that. But otherwise, I don't think it is, because we do have the appearance of the pirate who was in the episode of Mandalorian, the guy who ran away from the Kale pirate. So he's already talked about making an appearance in Skeleton Crew. So therefore, there are pirates in Skeleton Crew, and pirates fit in well in an Amblin story. So Hondo and Naka would fit in very well in an Andor's or in a Skeleton Crew story, an Amblin story. So to me, that's the number one choice, TV wise, live action TV wise, where we would possibly get Hondo Ohnaka. All right, let's break into the animated side of things. We have 3 animated series that are in discussion, or at least that are reported to happen, announced, as it were. Speculation is always ripe about other things. And of course, I'm always going to take my chance and take my shot that if someone's ever watching this, I'm still pitching Lucasfilm, Dave and company. Give me a Clone Wars style show set after episode 6, between episode 6 and episode 7. Clone Wars style anthology, in terms of you do a story with Luca and Laura Santeca. You do a story with Han and Leia. You do a story with Han and Lando. You do a story with young Ben Solo. You do a story with Chewie. It just makes so much sense. You got a 4 or 5 season series that ends perhaps with Luke leaving. Maybe that's it. Maybe the climax is the fall of Luke's temple. That could be a great series to do, and a great way to do it animated, because then you have the character like Mark Hamill could voice Luke Skywalker, and things of that nature. I think it's just a missed opportunity if you don't. But I'm not working Lucasfilm, so none of this is in development. So let's go back. Vision season 3 is definitely been announced. That's all we have of it. But I'm excited about it. I don't know what they're going to do as far as it's going to be a more specific to a specific country, going to be more worldwide again. I almost feel like they should take this to the next step, and maybe instead of doing a Vision season 3, maybe do a couple of miniseries based on the studios. Let studios expand out their stories. Some of them feel like they could go different places, and let them do miniseries. I would love to see a Vision season 3 be like 3 episode arcs from some of the studios who have done work for Vision season 1, Vision season 2, expanding that out. You could have a big season 3 where it has some new, some old. Continue a little bit though, because that's the one thing that Vision doesn't have. As far as that, they're always one short story, always little short stories, which are nice, but you lose the connectivity that is so big in Star Wars. So give us some development further in some of these things. I would love to see that. Maybe even take a break as far as the new things, and go Vision season 3, have it be the arc story I just talked about, like 3 episode arcs of continuations, and then do season 4 where we go back to the beginning and let a whole new batch of people in. I don't know when it's going to take place, though. I feel like that's going to be taking its time. It's not going to hit any mark. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get that until 2025. That's my thought. 2025 is where we'll probably get that baby beginning, maybe probably mid 20, like summer 2025. That's my thought on that. I could be wrong. They could be well into it already, because they're not very clear on what's going on. They don't have a process of where they are, because it's also so many different studios, right? So I guess you could see at the end of 2024, wintertime potentially. But part of the problem with predicting for the animated series is that animation has its place, but I feel like it's always been the redheaded stepchild to a degree, which is hard to imagine because Dave Filoni is so integral to Lucasfilm now. But like last time, we had Bad Batch season 2 airing at the same time as Mandalorian, and I feel like there's enough place in the universe, enough time in the universe where there shouldn't have to be any overlap. Let Bad Batch have its moment. Let Mandalorian have its moment. And not have them overlap, because it just seems like it's taking away from part of you're kind of eating part of your audience. Animated doesn't. It feels like live action has always been more important to Star Wars to a degree. As far as the general audience is concerned, there's a hardcore animated fans, and the hardcore Star Wars fans knows how important Clone Wars and Rebels were, for example. So give it its due, and let's not make people choose. I mean, I know most of us will watch both anyway. But give it its time to digest, and let us not have to rush through one to get to the other. But that's an argument for another time, I guess. Let's talk about the other two we got here. I'll get to Bad Batch season 3 shortly. Tales of the Jedi season 2. Supposedly, initially, I had heard summer of 2024. That might be pushed back. I don't know. I'm not sure how much the animation was pushed back, if at all, due to the strikes. I'm very excited about this. Oh, I forgot to say, I'm sorry. Visions season 3. I'm looking forward to it. I'd say 7 out of 11. I like Visions. I'm not the biggest fan of. Much prefer the canon and the connectivity of stuff. So that cuts it down a few notches for me. But I do overall enjoy it. So, all right, Tales of Jedi season 2. Get back to that. I do think that's supposed to coming out in summer of 2024. That might get pushed back. I'm very excited about this because of the potential. The potential is definitely something that could be hit and could not be hit. Depends what Dave wants to do. Depends on how much Dave is involved. Kind of feel like Dave is overseeing, and if I'm reading my pulse right, because he's so heavily involved in Ahsoka, so bothered with him involved with Mandalorian, so involved with this movie, I don't think he has time to really go in depth on a Tales of the Jedi season 2. So I think he'll more likely be overseeing it, and maybe he'll get an arc. He'll do an arc in season 2, and then other artists and other storytellers will be able to tell their stories during season 2 as well. What excites me about that is I think we could touch so many different things. There's so many different places we can go with this, and I hope they live up to that potential. I would love to see a Balin Skull arc. I would love to see a Luke Skywalker arc. I'd love to see. I know a lot of people getting away from the Skywalker saga, but give me a animated Luke Skywalker arc in Tales of the Jedi. It makes sense. Give me some of the High Republic Jedi. Let's get crazy. Let's get all sorts of things. Let's fill in some of the gaps and get some time with some of these Jedi we've missed. I love some Clone Wars Jedi stuff. That'd be kind of cool as hell. Getting back into that little redux, little nostalgia there for that. There's just so many ways you can go, and while they're shorts and they're not connected to they're not an overall arcing storyline, they do fill in these gaps quite nicely. The Dooku arc of Tales of the Jedi was phenomenal. The Ahsoka one was really cool too. It had some nice little touching moments that added on to the lore, and that's what these pieces should do. Touch like little touches where they have big overall connected stories that kind of just kind of explain a little bit, not explain, but give you more depth to some of these characters. That's what these should do, and I'm here for it. The only thing I want more. I don't want 6 episodes. I want to see like at least 16, 20, something like that. Let's go nuts. Let's go nuts. But on an excitement scale, I'd say it's a good 9.5, 10 out of 11. I can't wait for this. I hope it's going to be really good. Finally, for animation, Bad Batch Season 3. Woohoo! Bad Batch Season 3. Right away, 11 out of 11. I can't wait for this. This is some of my favorite pieces of Star Wars since Disney's taken over, and been a slow burn. But I'm really involved with all these characters. I really can't wait to see the outcome of this. I want to know what happens with Omega. I want to know what happens with their batch. I want to know what happens in general with Mount Tantus and the clones, everything else. This has been it's a connectivity towards the Clone Wars with Rex, Cody. So much to do. I'm so excited we get a season 3. I'm so happy we got a season 3, a final season 3. How's it going to end up? I don't know, but I can't wait for it. We should get a real trailer soon. I feel we're going to get this first quarter of 2024, hopefully January, February. I'm kind of hoping that it's not the same time as Skeleton Crew, so I can really dive into Bad Batch and like just let that sit because that's so well. But yeah, I can't wait. I really can't wait for this one. I'm very excited, and you should be too. It's some of the best storytelling Star Wars has, quite frankly. So let's get to it. 11 out of 11 soon. And I'm going to say, as far as Hondo goes, Visions, I'm going to say 1 out of 10. Doesn't seem like they want to take Visions. They want to take their own solo characters. Very unlikely to have canon characters in Visions. Tales of the Jedi. That's hard to rate that because there's so many things going on. Like it depends on when they are, who's involved. I mean, if it's during Clone Wars, Hondo's there, so I can. In some ways it's like an 8 out of 11 to have Hondo return in animated form. In other ways, it's 3 out of 11 because it depends on when it is, right? But give me a time where Hondo meets Luke and Han, like after episode 6, and I'm all in. So I'd love to see it. Bad Batch, I feel, is a place where we could definitely see Hondo during season 3. Bad Batch is going to need a lot of help from the underworld, so to speak. They can't. There's no Republic, no rebellion really yet. The Empire is on their tails. You have to have some help from the underworld. Hondo's there. Hondo's waiting. So I'd say I'd say there's an 8 out of 11 chance that Hondo makes an appearance. Dave likes to bring back crews, and I know Dave isn't completely in charge here, but I think Dave disciples are. So I think it's a high probability we'll get Hondo sometime during season 3 of the Bad Batch. So, all right, that is the TV side of things. Let's go into the movie. All right, let's get into the movie side of things. We have a bunch of projects that we're going to talk about here as well. And some of them are definitely going to be made. Some of them, I should never say definitely, huh? I should never say definitely. There's nothing that's been definitely going to be made. But I don't want to add to that narrative too much. So most likely to be made versus some that aren't going to be made. There's some that might be made and people have given up on. Let's start with that initially. Okay, the initial, of course, the one we talked about the most in this case is the Rian Johnson Star Wars trilogy. Everybody at this point presume it's canceled, presume it's not going to happen. And I'm not here to say it is going to happen for sure. There's a whole lot of time before that's going to happen. Obviously, The Last Jedi was a very divisive movie. It has caused a lot of not issues, but it has definitely caused a little bit of tension between the fans and Lucasfilm for various reasons. Most people I know loved it. Some people I know hated it. I'm in between. I'm in between. I'm one of those kind of rare guys in between. I enjoyed a lot of it. I think there's a lot of good stuff in it. I think it's the most beautiful Star Wars film we've ever had, as far as visually. I love the look of the film. I love most of the story of the film. I'm on board saying that I'm a big fan of Rian Johnson's Last Jedi and would love to see Rian Johnson doing Star Wars in the future. Absolutely, I can say that. Rian Johnson is a star director, talented director, and so he's definitely worth giving another shot to, whether you like The Last Jedi or not. Because quite frankly, I still think giving him a series of films, or giving him even a film that's away from the Skywalker saga with new characters would be a good development for him and his detractors, because most of his detractors didn't like how he handled Luke and things of that nature. Again, I think they're wrong, but that's their opinion. I got to let them have that opinion, of course. So what's happening? Obviously, before Last Jedi even came out, they announced that he would be heading up a Star Wars movie trilogy featuring new characters from a corner of the galaxy that Star Wars has never before explored. And then Last Jedi happened, and it kind of feels like, well, not a lot's happened in the Star Wars trilogy news front at this point. Ryan got on board doing Knives Out, and he made a deal with Netflix for multiple movies, including Glass Onion, including a third Knives Out movie. But if you ask Rian Johnson, you ask Kathleen Kennedy, neither of them have said anything about not happening or not going to do it or anything like that. But people have just assumed it's canceled. People have assumed it's canceled. Now, I think that if it's going to happen, it's a ways away still. I think that there's too much going to be on the plate beforehand. But I still think that canceling it and saying it's definitively not going to happen is a bit harsh and a bit too much for me. You've talked the conversation they've had. Kathleen Kennedy, her quote just said it was on the back burner because that Ryan has been unbelievably busy with Knives Out and the deal that he made at Netflix for multiple movies. He said that Rian Johnson said actually the same kind of thing. I've talked to Kathy about it, and we're still talking about it. I had such an amazing experience making The Last Jedi. It's entirely a matter of scheduling. For me, putting Glass Onion out, and making the next one of these, the answer is I just don't know. Kathy also just said he's unbelievably busy. Ryan and I talk all the time, so we're not actively involved in anything at the moment because he's doing another one of the Knives Out movies, and God knows what else. But he really wants to step back to the space, but it's a big commitment of time, so it's really on him. Seems to me like there is obviously, I understand looking at that and saying it's not going to happen. I'm not naive enough to say, like between the lines, that they're not going to shit on each other. They're obviously friends with each other, and that in a perfect universe, galaxy, whatever, that we would be fine, and this would definitely happen. It's not a perfect universe. Star Wars is a big commitment. Ryan did have some divisiveness to him. Maybe that gave him pause. I don't know. But I still kind of feel like Ryan will get his Knives Out stuff going. He'll do a couple of them. Maybe he'll do something else. But I think at some point he will want to step in and try another trilogy. Now, the biggest issue would be Kathleen Kennedy. If Kathleen Kennedy decides to step down at some point, maybe that changes the narrative. But while Kathleen Kennedy is still there, while Ryan Johnson is still making films, I still kind of feel like there's something to the story. Now, how likely is it going to happen? Despite all that, I'm not here to say it's a 8 out of 11 or anything. I'm going to say it's about a 4.5 out of 11. There's too much between it that it could fall apart. But I think that the intentions are there to make it on both sides. That's what makes it always possible to happen. So there we go with there. As far as Hondo and that, probably not. I'd say it's a 1 out of 11 chance for Hondo to be in that movie or that trilogy, rather. They're all new characters, et cetera, et cetera. As far as my excitement goes, do I want to see it? I want to see it. I do want to see it. My excitement level isn't too high, but the only reason it's not too high is because it's so vague and so unsure of happening. So if it was announced, like here it is, 2029, 2031, 2033, Ryan Johnson's next movies are the Star Wars trilogy, I'd be at a 7 or 8 out of 11. The way it is right now, I'll get a 5 out of 11. Okay. Lando movie. Now, this has obviously seen some room. We've talked about it here in Holy Snow, seen some movement. It was originally going to be a series, announced as a series with Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian. And then all of a sudden, there was no discussions about it. Justin Simeon was attached, and then all of a sudden, he wasn't. It was kind of strange that they made this announcement, nothing happened forever. And then just recently, all of a sudden, it's now not a series, it's a movie, and Donald Glover and his brother are going to be taking over the writing duties. And so Donald and Steven, Donald's a very busy guy as well, like Ryan Johnson. He's got a lot of stuff to do it. Kathleen Kennedy a couple of times just said it's up to Donald to get it together because he has his business. But I have to admit, I have to think this is definitely much more likely to happen now. Likeliness to happen, I'm going to give this a 7 out of 11 at this point because Donald and his brother taking over means that Donald really wants to do it. Donald really wants to do it and do it right. He's taking over Justin. He obviously wants to make this happen. So to me, Donald pushing it, I think Kathleen Kennedy wants it to happen, and I think she's definitely going to let it happen. Like she's not, she's like waiting on Donald. She said it's up to Donald, basically. If Donald is now taking steps to make sure it happens, it's going to happen. What it is a prequel to Solo? Is it a post-Solo experience? We get to see some other Solo characters in there again. We never got to see Solo 2 happen. Maybe this is the way to get Solo 2, kind of. Maybe Solo, maybe Kira, maybe Maul. Who knows? I don't think it would be that way. I kind of feel like Donald Glover would want to do it. He's writing it. He'd want to do his own Lando study because I think having Solo 2 in the Lando universe would kind of undercut Lando as the main character, so to speak. We'd all be wondering about, the Kira stuff, the Maul stuff. I would be surprised if Han makes an appearance. That would make sense. But yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm getting excited about it. 7 out of 11. I think Donald fits the character very well. I have to see more before I get more excited about it, but I think it's going to happen, and I do. The only problem is when. And that's actually, to stop here, I think that's the problem with a lot of these movies. There's a lot of movies talked about. Right now, we have 3 movie slots that were announced by Lucasfilm at Celebration, and then one was pushed back. It was initially going to be December 2025, December 2026, December 2027. Those are the dates that were initially planned at one point. Actually, at one point it was 3. I believe it was 25, 27, 29, and all of a sudden things got pushed, and then it wasn't sure. Most recent movie release dates were then pushed down to 2025, 2026, and 2027. And then the movie was put from December of 2025 was pushed back due to strikes and everything else to May of 2026. So right now we have May of 2026, December of 2026, which is 2 Star Wars movies in a year, which is going against everything that they said they wanted to do. I don't know. In December of 2027, is everything going to get pushed to May? Is everything going to get pushed? Is the May one going to be pushed to the 2026 date? 2026 getting pushed to 2027, 2027 getting pushed to 2028. I don't know. There's a lot in place. Even so, that's 3 movies. We have like 5 or 6 movies in discussion. So where do they fall into place? Is this after 2026, after 2027, after 2028? When do these get done? Are these Disney Plus things? I don't know. There's lots to talk about. That has to do with what's going on, really. Next movie we'll talk about, I'll run quickly on this one. Rogue Squadron movie. It's canceled, I believe. Obviously, Patty Jenkins is not working on it anymore. That is for sure. They still are calling it on a back burner. She made some comments how like she was still kind of working on it, but everything that is coming out makes it look like this is not going to happen, or at least definitely not going to happen with Patty Jenkins. Maybe they folded, maybe Rogue Squadron and Rangers of the New Republic will be folded into one. I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet. I don't know anything about this. I think as far as the likeliness of it going to happen, it's kind of a two thing. I think as is, 2 out of 11. Do they ever repurpose a Rogue Squadron movie or make a Rogue Squadron movie? I think it's more likely it's going to happen. I think it's going to take a break for a while, and eventually, after all these current movies come back, they'll revisit the idea of doing a Rogue Squadron movie, at least in name alone, basically an X-wing Top Gun X-wing pilot kind of movie. I think that's going to happen at some point, but not for a while. Next up, let's talk about Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy's Jedi Order movie. Well, that's the one that's supposed to happen first. It feels like. I feel like they brought Daisy Ridley back on board. They made the big announcement at Celebration. The script was mostly done. I think they didn't quite get it done by the time the strike hit, because after the Damon Lindelof, Justin Britt Gibson wrote the original script, and that was not loved by Kathleen Kennedy. They decided to go a different direction. They left. Stephen Knight came in, of course, from Peaky Blinders, and he was going to work on the screenplay. At one point, the script was weeks away, but then the strike happened. The strike is done now for writers, so he should be back on board getting that script ready. So that's the important thing. Daisy Ridley, there's rumors that Daisy Ridley might have a producer credit on this, which means she'd be allowed, I believe. Again, I'm not going to profess to know the ins and outs of the SAG strike and what they can and cannot do, but as a producer, while she can't act anything or cast anything, she could be involved in the story process, at least figuring out what they want to do with that. It is, Kathleen Kennedy did say it connects to the Skywalker sagas, and we're 15 years out from Rise of Skywalker, post-war, post-First Order, Jedi are in disarray. It's all about Rey's attempt to build the Jedi Order based on the book she has from Luke and based on what she promised Luke. So that's the idea of where they're going. There's rumors, of course, and I think they're going to happen, that we're going to have the return of Finn. John Boyega really at one point was like not coming back and had no interest, and all of a sudden changed his tune after a conversation he had with Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm about what he wanted and what they wanted. Maybe some money was involved, probably more likely, hopefully a better plan for his character, which John Boyega was dissatisfied with his journey in the sequel trilogy, which is understandable. He definitely was pushed aside a lot. So him having a juicier role, potentially, maybe he'll get a producer credit, I don't know, but I think he's going to come back. I think the likelihood of him coming back is a 9 out of 11. This movie happening, I think, is a 10.5 out of 11. You don't do all the kind of, this has been more than just an announcement. Oh, this is a movie that this person's directing. It's come out here. This has had a lot more movement than that. This is definitely far more. It might not happen. Maybe Stephen Knight's script won't be the one they use. Maybe they'll tweak it even further when they get some more involvement on it. I think this one definitely happens. I think this is the first film that comes out in May of 2026. That's the date it's supposed to hit. But there's question about it. I mean, I will say, as someone who liked to enjoy the sequel trilogy very much, it's obviously been a divisive point in the fan base. Your return, especially Rise of Skywalker, Episode 9, definitely has some divisiveness amongst the fans. It's probably one of the lower rated Star Wars films. So what do? Your first step back in the Star Wars universe, like they did Force Awakens as their first step back, and they kind of tried to erase the taste of the prequel trilogy out. That's what it kind of felt like. It felt like we're bringing back the original trilogy. We're bringing back the OT. It's the feel of the OT. In fact, some people would go so far as to say it was a soft reboot, a soft remake of Episode 4 to a degree. And I understand that. I understand those accusations. That seems so harsh, than accusations, but those thoughts, those beliefs. So if they're going to do this kind of movie, it almost feels like they're doubling down on the sequel trilogy, but they're at least going to try to do it the right way. It's hard to say. I don't know if this is the right decision to have this movie be the first Star Wars movie back in the theaters. I kind of want to let this one cook a little bit, and maybe put this one in second, get something else in there first. Maybe the Mandoverse movie, which we'll talk about in a second. Maybe not. Maybe something totally different, like the Mangold movie. I don't know. I am excited, though. I'm going to give it a solid 9 out of 11, 10 out of 11, because quite frankly, this is moving forward in the timeline. I've always been a big proponent of seeing what happens next more than what happened before. Some stories deserve a before. Getting Darth Vader's story was very important. Getting the Clone Wars was very important to episode 3. Getting take place between episode 6 and 7, very important to see how that happens because we don't have a lot on that. But this is like still, I'd rather move the timeline forward. Okay, we had the prequel trilogy. We had the Civil War, the Clone Wars. We had the Civil War, Galactic Civil War. We had the First Order. What's next in this galaxy? That's the wide open space that has nothing connected to it, except for the past is connected to it, but nothing stopping it from going in any direction they want. So that's always exciting to me. So 10 out of 11 for me. I can't wait to see it. Hondo being there, I'd give it a 5 out of 11, 6 out of 11. You know, if it gets in live action somewhere, he's always more likely to be there. I'm hoping it gets debut before then. Next up, the Dave Filoni Mandoverse movie. Obviously, we talked about this one quite a bit so far. This is going to be the cinematic event that's going to tie in all the Mandoverse shows: Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Book of Boba Fett, Skeleton Crew, etc. This is going to be the big bad movie, big bad between episode 6 and episode 7. This is the big event. Dave Filoni mentioned that the movies are the big like Death Star like events, and this is that moment of time between 6 and 7, which is the big event. Which is why a movie is warranted. I think you're going to see the big 3. I think there's no way you can do this without Han, Luke, and Leia. I think that's what all the de-aging thing has been about. I think that's what they're going to go with. They don't want to recast, and you can have that. That's a different argument to have. That's a different conversation. I don't want to get into the argument either way. I know some people want to recast. Some people want a de-aging. I honestly don't really care either way. I like de-aging. I think it's kind of cool. I have never had an issue with it because as far as the physicality of it, the rights of it aside is more tricky. But I don't really have any say in it, and I'm hoping that Disney's doing it the right way. If Luke is around, Mark Hamill agrees to it, perfect. If Harrison agrees to it, perfect. If Leia's family if Carrie Fisher's family agrees to it, not perfect. And I understand definitely the creepiness of that to a degree, but at the same time, I kind of like the idea of it as a galaxy far, far away. I don't mind it, but I understand if you don't. I totally understand that argument. But either way, I think you can't not have the big 3 in this movie. But even though Din and Ahsoka and everything might be in charge, Thrawn might be a big villain. If this is that big of an event that Dave is talking about, if it's that kind of pivotal moment in the Star Wars universe, you can't not have the Skywalkers involved. You just can't. It would make no sense at all. So, but this is the one I'm 11 out of 11 looking forward to because of that. This is that big moment that the movies are for. This is that big galaxy-inducing moment that we're looking forward to. This is getting all the characters we've ever loved together. Not ever, but like you're gonna get Luke, Han, and Leia. I think you're gonna get Ahsoka. You're gonna get Din. You're gonna get all these characters. It's like an Avengers Endgame kind of scenario for us to a degree. I mean, they're not gonna call it that. And they're gonna probably push against that because I don't want to give it that kind of weight. But to a degree, it's a big buildup of a lot of different points of the Star Wars universe. So give it to me. 11 out of 11. And this is the most likely place we see Hondo, I think. This is the 10 out of 11. This is probably, if we don't get Hondo before in any of the series, this is the place where he'd probably make his debut because you'd pack as much as you can in there. And you look for those kind of moments. And having a Cad Bane live action Book of Boba Fett was a moment. It was a big moment. And I think having a moment like that for the fans in a Mandoverse movie could be really cool. So I don't want to wait that long. They'll give it to me. That's the one that's supposedly going to take place December of 2026. That might make it pushed back because of the strikes and everything else. They had a lot of story to tell. Ahsoka season 2, Mandalorian season 4, Skeleton Crew. I don't know how much more they have to tell. It depends on how the story is being plotted out. But definitely looking forward to it. Probably the most looking forward to it of all the movies. Next up, James Mangold, Ancient Jedi movie development. Now, who knows? There has been some talk, of course, that what happened with Trevorrow. He was announced for Rise of Skywalker. His movie came out that did not do well. Actually did very poorly, and then he was replaced. James Mangold was announced. James Mangold did Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny. Dial of Destiny was not the smash hit they hoped it would be. Although I will say they definitely had a very good working relationship, and Mangold definitely has much more of a pedigree to work on. So I don't think they're the same situation. I haven't heard much about it since the initial announcement of Celebration that James Mangold will be working on a film set thousands and thousands of years, like 25,000 years in the past, focusing on the first Jedi. Talk about carving out a space for yourself. No one's there. Maybe Hu Yang. That's about it. The rest are not there. I don't think he'll use Hu Yang either. I don't think that'll happen because I think he's not as connected into the Filoni verse or anything like that, the Mando verse. But I think this 9 out of 11 happens. I think Mangold really wants to have it happen. They have a great working relationship. This is a good movement. I just don't think it's going to happen soon. I think this might be in 2027, maybe. I know he's got a little bit. He's got the Dylan biopic, Bob Dylan biopic he was working on. I like it. I'm excited about it. I'm going to give it a solid 8 out of 11. The less connectivity makes it not as exciting, but kind of intriguing. It's still very intriguing. The first Jedi is something definitely interesting to explore. I want to see more before I really get my excitement levels up. I'm initially excited, like it said 7 or 8 out of 11. But give me a trailer, give me more production design, give me more of the stories, and I'll get amped up for sure. I'm quite sure I'm going to get amped up for this. And Hondo, 0 out of 11. He's not. There's no way they can stretch it that old. Unless they do some kind of like bookmark thing where maybe him and Ray are talking in the beginning of the movie and they do a flashback. That's their whole trilogy of that afterwards. I doubt it. All right. Sean Levy's Star Wars movie in development. Talked about that one last week. Obviously, some news was made when he talked about his recent conversation with Kathleen Kennedy, how Kathleen Kennedy wanted a Sean Levy movie. I know he's got Deadpool 3 going. I know he's got Stranger Things Season 5 wrapping up, and then we couldn't get into that conversation. This is one of those things, though, but when's it going to happen? When's it going to, even if, let's say he finishes Deadpool 3, let's say he wraps up Season 5 of Stranger Things, and then he makes this movie, but in that air date, does that mean there's a second movie in 2027? Is this going to wait till 2028? I mean, it seems like a long time away. I don't know. Is this going to be a streaming movie? Will Lucasfilm start making Disney Plus Star Wars streaming movies? I don't know. I'm excited about the film. I like Sean Levy as a director. I think while he doesn't have that auteur kind of unique style, and that you look at a movie and go, that's a Sean Levy movie. All his movies have been solid, and they've been fun, and they've been adventurous. Love Free Guy. I love The Adam Project. I love Stranger Things. So it seems like it could be a lot of fun. It's ironic I said that when his last conversation was, I want a Sean Levy movie. I don't really know what a Sean Levy movie really is, to be honest with you. But I do know I like it. I do know they're usually fun as the key words. So I think that's great for a Star Wars movie. I'd say a good, without knowing anything further, except for Sean Levy's directing it, 7 out of 11. When you see a trailer, that might amp up a little bit. Hondo in here? Maybe. I have no idea. We don't even know when it's taking place, so I have no idea. I can't even begin to rate that. So. All right, last one we're going to talk about is the much talked about and much possibly maligned, I don't know, Taika Waititi Star Wars movie. Taika Waititi, obviously, last seen in Thor: Love and Thunder, and that was a disaster as far as fans go, as far as Marvel goes. Not well received at all. I enjoyed it. I went in. Taika Waititi definitely went overboard with it. I definitely prefer Ragnarok Waititi when Waititi had a little bit of a reining in. I think Kathleen Kennedy can rein him in now. I do. I don't think Kathleen Kennedy is one to let him go just do anything he wants. I think he loves the brand. I think he's looking to rebound. He's co-writing the movie, I guess, with Chrissy Wilson-Cairns, who helped script in 1917, at least at one point. I've also heard that she was not anymore. I don't know what the truth is, but I don't think, as long as she's not writing it on his own, I want to have him have some help with it, help hone a great tone for the film. I don't want this to be an over the top. I wouldn't want a Love and Thunder set in Star Wars. A Ragnarok in Star Wars, maybe. I could see that, depending on what they're going to go with. I think it should be fun. He said he wants to explore a new side to Star Wars. And he said that, look, I think for the Star Wars universe to expand, it has to actually expand. I don't think I'm in any use of the Star Wars universe making a film where everyone's like, oh, great, well, that's the blueprints to the Millennium Falcon. Oh, that's Chewbacca's grandmother. That all stands alone. That's great. But I'd like to take something new and create some new characters and just expand the world. Otherwise, it feels like a very small story. To me, that seems good. I like what I'm hearing about the Waititi movie. Am I a little wary after Thor: Love and Thunder? Absolutely. Before Thor: Love and Thunder, I would have given this a 9 out of 11 out of excitement. Pushed down to about a 7.5 or 8. I'm someone who likes Thor: Love and Thunder. that will definitely turn when I see the trailer. If I see the trailer and it's too much, I'll probably push my excitement down. If it hits the right tones, if the right good trailer could push it up for me, because I do think Taika Waititi extremely talented. I do like most everything he's been involved with. So yeah, there we go. As far as Hondo, there we just said he's going to try to do all new characters. I think it's a 2 out of 11. I mean, Hondo does fit Taika Waititi very well, so I could see him using that, like maybe him potentially, depending on when it takes place. But overall, I'm pretty doubtful. But well, all right. I think that's all they have. I just did a whole big update. I don't know anything else that we have to talk about. If I missed something that's in production, rumored or otherwise, I apologize. You let me know, and I'll make note of it next week. But that should do it. If you hopefully you liked the show, hopefully you appreciated the conversation here. I hope to have more conversations with you in the future. Hopefully next week Matty will be back, so I'm not talking to myself. Again, hit the like, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you want to support the channel even further, PLD Projects to Patreon, patreon.com/PLD Projects. You can join such stalwart folks as Austin Goodell, Jeremiah Morris, Matthew Kearns, Brandon Buckingham, Jeff Alterman, and a bunch of others. I couldn't do this all without you. We had some great hangouts. I did extra content. That's where the Harris Stunt lives. But if you can't, I understand. Just try to get everybody involved. Share the video. Tell your friends about us. Let us know. Always love everything's going on here on PLD Projects. 2 mediocre white dudes on film. PJ Campbell and I doing deep dives into the Friday the 13th saga right now as it goes on. We're not done with spooky season yet. We're never done with spooky season. Lego and I doing a show on V, the V franchise. We are going through the series right now, the 1985 weekly series. I do, of course, Crown Jewels, the Queen podcast I do on my sister channel, PLD Projects Crown Jewels. We're talking about Roger Taylor's solo singles this week. Then we'll get into News of the World, a seminal album for the band. And of course, I do all sorts of stuff here and there. So stay tuned. Let me know what you think about these things. We can go from there. And yeah. But until then, of course, I can't wait for Matty to come back. Love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. And I will see you next time. May the force be with you. Always.